Hello and welcome to this live webinar from Philantropia about donor networking. My name is Dr. Eva Wieners. I'm from Germany and I've been working with Philantropia for basically the last 2.5 to 3 years. We also run the website Proposals for NGOs, where we provide NGOs and grassroots organizations with resources about proposal writing mostly. So it would be great if you could just let me know if you can see and hear me clearly, because sometimes we have some issues with going live. So it would be great if you could just type into the comments if everything is clear, if the audio is okay, and if everything is working on your side. And then we could just get started. So today I will try to keep my presentation short to maximum of 30 minutes, and in the end we will still have time for some questions. So if you have questions, you can type them into the comment box. Sometimes if there's many comments, it gets a bit crowded and difficult for me to see in the end. So if you feel like I'm missing your question, you can always type it back in the end, and I will try to answer as many questions as possible to make sure that you get all the information. Okay, it sounds like that sound is clear, video is clear, so that's great. So we could just get started. I'm seeing people here from India, from South Africa, Kenya. I saw someone from Bangladesh. Yeah, it's great to have so many people live here with us today, and I'm really excited to be sharing this presentation with you. Okay, so today we will be talking about donor networking and how to connect with donors. We will cover some different topics. We will talk about why donor networking. First of all, we will define what donor networking is. Maybe not everybody's clear on the term. Then we'll talk about why you should do donor networking. Then how you can do it, how can you get in touch with people, how can you find addresses, etc. And then how you can approach new donors. So today this is a free webinar, so we will not go into every single detail. We'll give you an overview and give you important tools that will help you to understand how you can approach new donors and how you can connect. I'm not going to be able to go into every single detail, but I think you will have a toolkit that is necessary when you leave this webinar. We also have further information in our online courses, but we'll be talking a little bit about that in the end. So what is donor networking? What does that actually mean? So donor networking describes the process of connecting with a donor before you submit a proposal to establish a relationship with them. This is actually something that many fundraisers don't really like, because it's not easy, it's a lot of work, it's hard and complicated, and it has a lot to do with being confident in oneself. You have to go out, you have to talk with people, you have to be forward, and that is something that is very different to just being able to hide behind a keyboard and just write proposals and do the nitty-gritty of the work. This is a little bit different, but this is the very important part of the work of a fundraiser, and it's really important that fundraisers know how to do this, know how to carry themselves, how to approach new people and new donors to be able to be successful, because in the end, a lot of the fundraising business comes down to networking. Who do you know? Who knows you? How well can you connect with donors? How well can you connect with partners? And that will define a lot of your success in the end. So donor networking is actually a part of the grant cycle. I don't know if this is the first webinar that you join us for, or if you've already joined for a couple of others. Maybe you've seen this chart. But this is the grant cycle that we always follow, that we promote for people to follow. This means it starts with research. That is the very first step. that you have to do, because many fundraisers, many NGOs, and also especially people on the board, they think fundraising is all about the proposal and that's everything. So if you have a good proposal, you'll be successful. But that's not true. The grant cycle, the fundraising cycle, has many more elements, and it's very important that you go through all of them, because if you have the perfect proposal but you don't have a good donor match, you will not be successful. If you have a good project but you don't evaluate it, you don't learn from the past, you will not be successful. And again, if you find a good donor but then you can't write a good proposal, you will not be successful. So you have to cover all your bases. You have to cover the entire grant cycle. And we will see where networking fits into this. So the first step that you should do is research. You need to find a very good donor match. You need to find a donor who's interested in the same topics, who's ready to promote the approaches you want to use, who wants to work with similar beneficiaries, etc. So it needs to be a good fit from the viewpoint of the work, but also concerning values, common goals, etc. It needs to be a good fit, and especially the call needs to be the right call for you. And then the second step is to prepare. This stage of networking so intensely sometimes can be jumped if you just answer to a call, because then the donor already put their questions out there. They already said, yes, we want to see proposals. But many times when you do donor research, you will find a donor that is a perfect fit for you, but that where the website says no unsolicited proposals. Or if you're interested in working with us, just get in touch, stuff like that. In the network, you need to be able to get into contact with them to establish a relationship that will end up in a request for a proposal at some point. So this is the stage where you network and you establish yourself, you make clear what your position is, and you make a good connection with the donor. After this stage comes the applying, then the implementing. Then once you implemented your project, you have to evaluate. And with all that information, you do research again, because you will need another grant. You will need more funding probably. So you see, it's the second step. It's closely connected to research because the things that you learn during your networking stage also feed into your research again. So those steps are closely connected and super important before you even write any proposal, because these are the stages where you find out what the donor wants to see, where you find out how you should write your proposal to be the perfect match for the donor as well, and who you should send it to. So to position yourself in a good way, you really need to put attention to the research and networking phase. So why is donor networking important? Why is it so important to get into touch with people before you send a proposal? Why can't you just send a document? I really understand that some people hesitate from getting in contact with donors before sending something, because just preparing a proposal sounds like the professional way, and it sounds like the good way to go, because if your work can speak for itself, then why not let it speak for itself? But you have to imagine that donors and project officers at donors' offices, they get so many emails every day. They get hundreds and hundreds of emails per week. They have to wade through piles of information. So if you send an unsolicited proposal or a concept note or whatever, it is super difficult for them to actually give you the time to read it, to pay attention to it, etc. So even if your work is amazing, and even if you would be a good fit for that donor, maybe they will not have the time to find out about you and about this. But if you are able to establish a connection with the donor beforehand, then they will remember you. They will have much more interest in reading your proposal, reading your emails, trying to establish a partnership. So this is one thing that is very important. The other thing is that when you get into contact, you network with someone, you talk to people, and you establish your network, you also learn about your opposite. You learn about the donor if you network with a specific donor. So you can ask and find out what they actually want to see in a proposal. So that will enhance your chances of success by a very high percentage. Because if you just read the website, read their reports, etc., you will get a lot of information. But the best information you will still get when you talk to people, especially if they change program, if there is some new developments, etc. Maybe they don't have that up on the website yet. But if you talk to them, if you're able to connect on a personal level, you will get that extra information. You will get those tips, and all of that will help you to write a good proposal and to be successful in the long run. You also have to remember that, of course, there's many calls out there. This is what we also teach, how to find a call, how to answer to a call, to read guidelines, etc. But a much higher percentage is still of aid, of support, of grants is negotiated. So there's not an open call that all NGOs can answer to, but it's a negotiation between the NGO and the donor. So the donor, of course, will be much more happy, much more prone to negotiate with someone they know. They will not go out and search for people that they've seen for the first time. They will always go back to their connections and to their partners. So if you are in that roster, it's much more likely that they will talk to you, that they will consider you. So having this network helps really great. And this is something we've seen during this difficult time of the corona crisis as well. NGOs that were well connected, that had a huge network of partners, donors, people on the board, volunteers, etc. They survived this because they had support from different sides. And they also got grants that were negotiated, that were just given to people that were known. So this is very important, especially in times of crisis as well. And it will help you, even if networking with someone doesn't directly lead you to money, doesn't directly lead you towards getting a grant. Having all of these connections, having this network, having people know you will always help you and help your work, even if it's just with publicity. But that is also something that will contribute towards your reputation, and that again will contribute towards your fundraising success. So you have to see it as a whole, not just look at this one goal that you have. Yes, you want to get a grant, maybe you want to have money from that specific donor, but also you want to establish your network. You want to be of help to others, and you want others to be of help to you. And that way you will be more successful, you will be perceived as a good partner, and that will support your next proposal. So how can you network before you write a proposal? How is it possible? Of course, you have to be a little bit subtle and smart about it, because if you just send out blanket emails to people you think might be interested in your work, that can be difficult. People might not want to answer, etc. But if you work as a fundraiser, one thing that you kind of have to really understand is that you should always be on duty. Whenever you go out to a conference, to a talk, to a training, you are on duty. You are representing the organization that you work for, and you should always look out for contacts that might be of help to you. And again, this doesn't always mean just donors. This doesn't always mean direct access to money. This might be other things, but you should always be representing your organization in a good way. Always have your business cards, always look smart, be professional, and approach people telling them about your organization, about what you want to achieve, what your goals are, etc. But also listen. Be sure to listen to people, to find out what they want, what the trends at the moment are, etc. So that will really help you to be more successful and to be able to establish this network that will help you. Doing great donor research also is something that will help you in your networking process, because if you just contact anybody who works for a foundation, you will not be very successful. But if you find a great match, and a great match always means that either you're working in the same area, in the same community, with the same methods, same approaches, same goals, etc. Something needs to match. So if you find this match, then this is something that you can connect about. So then you have something to talk about that is not only money. So if you think about networking and connecting with people, of course, if you are working in somewhere in an African country with agriculture, and you send an email to a foundation that exclusively funds education in Asia, and you say, hi, this is me, can we connect? Then they will say, why? I mean, there's no overlap. But if you do your research and you find that foundation that funds agriculture in African countries, then they will say, yes, why not? Sounds interesting. Should we share experiences, etc.? So your donor research is extremely important for this. And you also saw that in the picture I showed before, the grant cycle. Donor research and donor networking preparing is closely connected. And then once you found a good match, you have to connect with the right people. So you have to think about who at this donor's office might be interested in our work, who could be the right person that has any kind of connection to our project, to you personally, to one of your employees personally, etc., so that they will be willing to actually read your email, to put in the time to maybe meet with you, maybe call you or have a phone call with you, etc. You always have to try to put yourself into the donor's shoes. So they get many emails, they get a lot of requests, so you kind of have to make yours special and really meaningful to get an answer to your email. So how can you find those right people at the organization? How can you figure out if there's any connection that you can make with them that will make it easier for you to be noticed by them and to get an answer to your emails? So one thing is, of course, it's great if you know someone. So this circles back again to having a good network. And you also have to understand that in the philanthropic sector, people circle around a lot. So if you meet someone at a conference, you give them your email, your business card, etc., they might move to another foundation 1 year later. So you might already know someone there. So it's always good if you find a donor match to check their employees and see if you know anybody. Did you work with them in the past? If you met them at a conference, etc. You might, because this sector is big, but again, sometimes it feels like a village because you just keep meeting people again, and people move around a lot. You can also see if your staff members know somebody, because again, probably they've worked for other organizations before. They are also well connected. So just ask around. If you found a donor that looks very interesting, ask around in your own organization if anybody has a connection to them, because they might surprise you. If you don't have any real personal connection, then think about who could be interested in your project, who could have a connection to your project. So, for example, if you are applying with an international NGO and you are working, let's say, in Nepal, and you find out that someone from Nepal is working in that office, which is located in New York or wherever, this person might be the right one to contact because they might have a connection, a closer connection to your project. Or if you study at the same university, if you see that they've taken as the same subjects that you have, etc. Some other connection to your project, if they've done research in the approach you're using, if they have worked in a similar project, etc. Some kind of connection that makes your entry more personal, and that gives you a point of entry. And then, of course, you also have to check who is responsible for your work. So if you connect with a foundation and they have someone responsible for Asian countries and you're based in Asia, then just contact them. It might make sense to try a different lane as well, but in general, the foundations try to keep it straight. So if there is someone responsible either for your area of work or for your country of work, for your continent of work, try to go through them. Try to establish a relationship and be interesting and make yourself known with your first email, with your first point of entry. Then how can you contact them. Sometimes it is kind of difficult to find that right person, to find information about them, or to find an email address or a phone number. So Google is your best friend here, because you can find a lot when you Google. You can also find email addresses when you Google, because normally at an organization all the email addresses have the same format. So if you know one, then you know all of them. For example, it's the first letter of the first name and point dot last name at organization, or it's the full name at organization, just the last name. If you figure out the structure of the emails, then you have almost all of them, because they will not change that structure. You can find that on Google as well. You can find email addresses sometimes in attendance lists of workshops, etc. So there's many ways that you can figure out email addresses. Social media is also a good way to connect. And I don't mean send a TikTok to them or something like that. There's professional networks like LinkedIn. In Germany you have Xing, but that is just here. Maybe your country has a different network that is used. Sometimes you can also use Facebook, because social media teams sometimes are more prone to react, because that's their job. They have to get in contact with their followers. But again, LinkedIn is a very good way to connect with people, to find people in the right positions, and also to find overlap of interest, whatever, overlap of backstory. So you can, in LinkedIn, you can see where people went to university. You can see their job history most of the time. So you can get a lot of information about them to then meaningfully connect with them. Yeah, and find out about those connections. You see if you have any contacts in common. Again, you see if you went to the same university, if you're from the same city, same country, whatever. Try to find those connections and then draw from them, and try to make this personal, this connection on a personal level before you move on to talking about your work, so that people are more interested to actually give you attention and listen to you. And then once you found out all of that information, how could you approach a new donor? So obviously there's many ways. If you meet someone personally, I always recommend that you practice an elevator pitch. That means like a small presentation that you could give in the time that an elevator closes and goes up 3 stories. Because sometimes you're stuck with someone important, someone meaningful in an elevator, and you kind of want to let them know what you're doing. So having all these things at the top of your mind, like knowing what you want to say, don't start stuttering when someone asks you, oh, where are you working? What's your project? What's your organization doing? But here we chose the form of email, because I think that is the most common way to get in contact with the new donor, with someone new, trying to connect via email. But sending out a cold email is something that is very difficult, and that doesn't really yield a lot of success. Many times cold emails are not answered. So there's some tricks that you can use. Again, trying to make this personal connection, trying to make it personal to kind of get on the radar of people. But the general parts of an introductory email are the information about who referred you, if that or which connection you have, why you're contacting them, who are you, what you want to learn, and a call to action, which is very important. So call to action can be asking for a phone call, asking for further information. If you are close to each other, asking for a meeting, something that can easily be done, and that the donor can easily say yes to. Don't make it too complicated, and don't ask for money in the very first email. And we have an online course about donor networking. Actually, we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But in that course, we also include a sample so that you see how a good cold email looks like, and which kinds of emails give you the best chances of getting through that pile of emails that donors get every day, because unfortunately it's not that easy. So then when you meet, what is important? And there's a couple of things I want to talk about. And here I chose this Turkish proverb, if speaking is silver, then listening is gold. And this is actually very important. Sorry, where am I? This is what I wanted to do. So when you meet a donor, we always see that many NGOs make the mistakes of just talking about themselves. And of course, when I say develop an elevator pitch, that sounds like that is what you would be supposed to do. But when you go into a conversation with a donor, you also have to try to find out about them. The more you let them talk, the better, because that gives you information, and information is very valuable. Because if you go in and talk about your organization, your approach only, it makes it very easy for them to shut you down, because they can just easily say, oh, look, we don't fund this, so don't bother. Or no, you don't have to send anything because this is not what we're doing at the moment. But if you are asking them for their priorities, for what they want to fund, what they want to see in a proposal, which approaches they're using, etc., then they will give you information, and you can directly use this information to kind of tailor your project to it. So if you go into a conversation and you say, oh, we only work with women in our agricultural project because we think this makes more sense in the situation we're in. Maybe that is the case. But then if the donor says, no, but we only fund projects who work with both genders, then you're out. But if you ask them again, what's your opinion towards working with one gender only, then they will say, oh, we don't do that. And then you already know, okay, then with this project, we have to use a different approach. So the more you ask, the more open you are, the more you show interest, you present yourself as a good partner, as someone who wants to learn, as someone who wants to, who's interested, who's intelligent, and you can use all of that information to actually make your pitch, and to develop a good proposal that they will like in the end. So you really have to think, talking is silver. Yes, of course, you have to give some information about your organization, about yourself, but listening is gold, because that gives you information. It gives you also time to kind of collect yourself, to give smart answers. And it shows that you are interested in a partnership and that you're not a beggar, because that is the thing that donors want in the long term. They don't just want to give you money and be done with it. They are looking for sustainable partnerships with people that have the same goals, with organizations that work for the same ends. And if you can present yourself as someone that does that, then you will be on the winning side. So this is something that you should really keep in mind. That is very important. And then we have some final tips that I wanted to talk about in this short webinar. So when you connect with donors, something that we see a lot, especially when it's through email, but also when people meet at a conference and meet for the first time, they immediately ask for money. And that is a big mistake, because nobody wants to be treated like a cash cow, and the donors don't want either. Of course, they know that if you are an NGO working in this area and you connect with them, you in the end need funding, and that's what you're after. But at the same time, you also have to think that they have to feel comfortable with you. And if you immediately ask for money, if you immediately go in for this, then they might feel pressured, etc. And they also kind of have to figure out first if you're a good partner, if there's something in there for them, before you can make that ask. At the same time, though, it's important that you do make that ask at some point. At some point, you have to get to the point what you want from them. It's not just about networking and then nothing else. At some point, you have to switch from networking to the applying stage. So at some point, you do have to ask them for something concrete. But in the beginning, don't make that your first question. Think about a call to action that is realistic, that they can do, that they can commit to, and that would be beneficial for both sides. Also think of different ways to collaborate. So don't only ask for a favor for your organization, but also think about what you can do for the donor. There's many ways you can partner up with donors. You can be helpful to them, and that might pay off in the long term. So you could, for example, offer data. That is something that donors are always looking for. If you have, if you did a background study and you have good data about an approach that you're using and that the donor is also using, that might be very useful for them. Or if you have field offices, if you have information, if you have pictures, whatever it is, think of ways to collaborate, and that could also be useful for the donor. And when you connect with them, you also have to always think of ways to frame your approach as a way of telling them, we want the same thing, let's work on this together. So what can you do that the donor will achieve their goal? Probably it's the same goal that you have, but you have to frame it in a way that you want to support the donor in achieving their goal and being more successful, because they are also going to be measured against their success with their goals. So if you can support them, if your work can actually contribute to that success, that is something that they want and need. Then again, be specific in your networking, especially when you go contact for the first time. If you include calls to action that are very vague, it's easy for them to dismiss them. So just imagine if you get an email from someone you don't know and they are asking you for a meeting, but they live far away. So you would have to travel by bus for a very long time. You would just say no because it's complicated. So don't ask for anything complicated. And also, if you get 20 emails from people that say, oh, we want to collaborate with you, we are looking for partnership, but they don't tell you what they actually mean by partnership, then it's going to be very easy, because you're busy, you have so many other emails, it's going to be very easy to just say, well, partnership, I'll think about that later, I'll answer next week, and then you forget it. This is the same for the donor. If you ask for something vague or something too difficult, something too high stakes in the first step, they will just dismiss you. Be specific, but be realistic. So choose something that they can actually do. If they're in the same city, you can ask for a meeting. It's no big deal. If they're in a different country, then ask for a Skype meeting or for a phone call, something that they can actually do. Again, if they're in your country, your community, you can ask them to visit your project to show. But if they are somewhere far away, that's too difficult. If you just ask for partnership or support, they will just ignore you. If you ask specifically and say, look, we know that you got 10 new machines that we can use in the field in agriculture. We would be interested in figuring out a way how you could support farmers in our area. Something very specific, even though that is maybe already a too big ask for the beginning. But something that makes sense, that they can do, that will support you. Nothing. Also, it can't be anything that is just a waste of time. It needs to be something that really has an end. But that would be a good call to action. And then, like we said, find your right point of entry. Try to make a connection on a personal level with people. Try to show them your similarities so that you connect with them. And then you should also try to use different channels to approach donors. So always network. Wherever you go, whoever you talk to, try to include them in your network, even if you can't directly benefit from them. They might help you in the future. They might be the missing link that will get you your next grant. And you always have to think of it that way. So you have to think and plan strategically also in your networking to be more successful. That means, like I said before, whenever you go out, think of who you meet, if they might be interesting, if you can include them in your network, and then try to document your network as well. It's good to be well connected, but if you don't have one file with all the phone numbers, one file with your business cards, whatever, if nobody can ever find the information, it's no use. So think about it strategically. Try to make a system of ordering the information that you found. You can include this information in your prospect table, where you also collect information about your donor research. Again, this is very connected, and just make it easily accessible that everybody at your organization can benefit from it. And you should also think about including networking goals in your fundraising strategy, in your strategic plan, because it's very important that people know that they're supposed to do this, that your employees also know that they should always try to contribute to your network, that they should collect this information, that everybody knows what they have to do and when, that people know why they're being sent to conferences, not only to present work, but also to make these meaningful connections. So what could be your next steps? So definitely you have to make a plan and assign responsibilities. So you should connect this closely to your donor research. When you do donor research, you fill out a prospect table. We have a lot of information about that in our donor research course, and also a sample and a template for this prospect table where you put in all the information, and you should add a column there that says to do. Who should connect? Who maybe has a connection there? Who's a good person to make this first contact, etc. Make a plan and assign responsibilities so that everybody knows what they have to do and what the next steps are. And then document all of that in your prospect table, where you also collect the donor research information. And this way you have a document that you can also include in your fundraising strategy, and that will really guide you through this process. And also think about what you want to achieve with your partners. Again, many people have the misconception that the only thing that you can achieve in a partnership with a donor is getting a grant, which of course is something important for many NGOs, but there's many other things where you can contribute, where you can collaborate, and that will be helpful, even if it's just for your reputation, or if it's methods, if it's sharing knowledge, etc. There's a lot of stuff that can be done, and that are important even beyond just getting a grant and just getting money. So like I said, I also wanted to talk a little bit about our online courses, because I know in this webinar I'm only able to give you a glimpse of all this information and all the things that we do and that are necessary to actually be successful in fundraising. So today this webinar was about donor networking. We have a full course about it that covers all the topics. What is donor networking? Why is it so important? More in detail. How can you connect? More methods, more tips on how to connect. How can you write cold emails? We've talked a little bit about that, but again, more details. And then how can you use networking strategically to make your fundraising more successful? So this is a full course, and the price on our website, philantropia.org, is $79. But we've also talked a lot about donor research today, because donor research is a step right before that. It's closely connected to networking. You should also collect the information in the same spot, and think about all these connections. So we also have a course about that, about donor research, how to find the right match. This includes sections about a definition, what is donor research, then why do you need it, why is it important, what are the best ways to do donor research, so how can you actually find donors, and how can you organize your research, which is very important because you can easily get lost and lose a lot of time and resources if you don't organize your donor research well. So this course also is $79. So this would bring up the price for both of the courses for $158, because we made a bundle out of those two. We have a 5-module course that covers the entirety of fundraising. It starts with the strategy development, then we have donor research, networking, eligibility, and then actually writing the proposal. But we've also decided to bundle those 2 modules that we also sell individually, because we think there's so many connections between research and networking, and we've touched on them today. So both of the courses include a video with tips and tricks from our instructor, Eric Dettiger. He shares his experiences from more than 2 decades of work in the field, lectures, a quiz, cheat sheets, a small workbook, downloads, samples, etc. It's all included in each of these courses. So together they would be 158. But you joined this webinar today wanting to learn more about this, you want to educate yourself. So we decided to put this all together and make a really great price for you. So 158 is not the price we're asking for at the moment. We are only asking for $60 because we really want to make this more accessible for more NGOs, and we know it's super important. Even if you have a perfect proposal, if you don't have donor research in place, if you don't know how to write a cold email, if you don't network, etc., you will just simply not be successful. And especially in this time with the situation we have worldwide with the coronavirus, this is getting more and more important. So we really wanted to give more of you to have this chance of accessing these courses. So the price for these two is actually only $60. But we've also added more stuff to it because we also have a resource guide about a concept note. The concept note is a short form of a proposal that many times is sent with a cold email, with this first kind of reaching out, with a call to action, etc. So it's a document, it's like a written elevator pitch. It's a great tool, especially if you network, if you connect with donors for the first time, but it's also difficult to write. So we've put together this the concept note resource guide with more than 50 pages, samples, again, a template, etc. It has a lot of information. And we sell the concept note resource guide for $25 on our page. And again, because we want to help you with this, we would give this on top of those 2 courses for free. We would send it to you by email for free if you decide to buy that bundle offer, those 2 courses. And I'm sure my team will be dropping the link to this offer in the comments right now, and you will also get an email with the information again after this webinar. But if you have the means, click it now. I don't know how many we can sell of this because we have a limitation there, and also it will not be live for a long time. I think we had decided to leave it up until Friday, so please just make sure that you take this offer. Again, just to let you know, it's a bundle offer from 2 full courses, donor research and donor networking, plus the concept note resource guide. So this is material that we already priced very competitively at this usual rate, but it's stuff that costs $183. We will give you for only $60 today. You have the opportunity until Friday, but if you're up for this, I recommend you click the link right now and just go further to our page. Yeah, I hope many of you are able to take this opportunity to learn more and to take advantage of all those tools that are included. Like the prospect table template is great because you could just have to fill in the information. It really guides you through the process of finding donors. You get a template and an example for a cold email, so you get a much better idea of how to connect with people. You learn a lot about the concept note, which calls for actions are good, which ones you can include, etc. So this is really going to help you to make those first steps to find out how you can connect and how you can establish that connection. We also have other courses on our website, philantropia.org. Maybe you have taken one before, maybe you know us this way. We have free courses as well. For example, now about fundraising in times of Corona, there's a free course, strategy in times of Corona, etc. So you can check those out. But we also have a course on writing a proposal, fundraising strategy, eligibility, but more technical ones, funding from the European Commission, USAID, Gulf donors, etc. So I recommend you also check out our other courses at philantropia.org. And because you joined today, we also want to offer you 30% off of any courses you find on our website if you use the coupon code PFN users. So you get 30% off anything you find there and that you want to sign on. So I really hope to see you in one of our courses. Thank you very much again for attending this webinar, and if you want to learn more, make sure to check out the rest of our course program and our resources on philantropia.org and proposalsforngos.com. And yeah, of course I talked too long like I always do. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't bore you. But we still have time for questions now, and I will switch back and see if you have any questions and if there's anything I can do. It's the first one that pops here up here. I see the certificate. We don't give a certificate for our live webinars because they're open, but you do get a certificate when you take one of our courses, when you sign up. Actually, for the one that we just advertised, that bundle offer, you actually get 2 certificates, one for each. And we are also a certified education provider with CFRE. So if you want to use this towards your CFRE certification, you can use those points that you gain with these courses as well. So for this free webinar, there's no certificate, but if you sign up for our courses, you get an official certificate that you can use for your own certification with CFRE as well. And I'm seeing that there's no link, so my team might have had some issues with the internet because they are based in Nepal. So let me see if I can quickly drop it. Might take me a second. It's the problem. So we have a very international team. We have an office in Nepal, we have an office in New York, and I'm based in Germany. So sometimes they use contact during the webinar. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure it out live now. Let's see, I think I should be able to post something. Yes, so I hope it shows up for you now. So this is the link to the offer, but you will also get the information in the follow-up email. If you signed up for this webinar, you will get a follow-up email with a copy of the presentation and also the link to the offer again and some more information about what is included and the deadline to it, because we cannot keep this up forever. So we will close this on Friday. And I really hope that as many as possible are going to be able to sign up for this and to join us before Friday. So let's see. So there's one, it's more of a comment that we should prioritize new NGOs. Yes, I definitely see that it is very difficult for new NGOs to get into this field. So we actually have an online course particularly for new NGOs, how to get a grant as a new NGO, as a newcomer. So I recommend you check that out as well. But we also have a couple of free resources. I think on our YouTube channel, I already I gave a webinar about particularly this topic a while ago. So maybe if you scroll through our videos, you will see that video to get some more information about how new NGOs can break into the field. But actually networking is super important, because the better connections you have, you can enter through partnerships, you can make a name for yourself, etc. Networking, being a good partner, having a great network and having good connections is very important for new NGOs as well. Of course, I also forgot to say that. I'm going to say it now. If you joined us here, please also subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure that you get notifications from us, because we do these lives on YouTube every second week. We change the topic a lot. We also accept queries. So if you have something that you feel like we should really talk about, you can also suggest us the topics. And so just to make sure that you don't miss any of our webinars, just please subscribe to our channel, subscribe to our newsletter, So you'll always be notified and you will not miss any of these webinars. So yeah, I see some of you have dropped their email addresses in the comments. That's also a great idea, because networking doesn't only mean networking with donors. It means networking within the field as well, because you might be able to exchange information, exchange tips. Maybe you know someone, etc. So just having these connections and establishing a network in the field is really good and helpful. And we have one question by Usha. What are the indicators of a good proposal? I've seen many proposals to donors, but our organization is not awarded. Yeah, that's we actually have, again, if you check here, I think a month ago I did a webinar on proposal writing, and I gave some tips there because there's some mistakes that are very common. So maybe you can check out those resources. But it might be the reason that you didn't choose a great match, because then sometimes proposals just don't even make it to the second stage. And then there's a lot of luck involved as well. That is unfortunate, but in today's world where so many NGOs are competing for a limited amount of grants, luck plays a big role. But the more you connect beforehand, the more you learn about the donor, what they want to see, etc., the better chances you actually have to be awarded at some point. But it sometimes feels like a numbers game. I understand your frustration. Again, I would recommend you check out the resources we have about this, the webinar I gave last month, and see if that helps you a little bit, and go further from there. Sometimes if you get rejected, you can also ask for feedback. That can also be helpful. Then someone called Program Manager is asking, some donors do not provide email addresses. They only provide postal address. What to do? Yeah, that's an issue. That is probably because they get too much mail. If you could send a letter sometimes and just request for a phone call, try to find out their phone number, etc. Or sometimes with Google you still find email addresses. There's also some platforms, you can also search for them, that actually give you the email address format of any given organization. So you just put in the name of the organization, and then they will tell you the way that organization uses email. So that might also be helpful. Or if you just send an email to info@organization name, that also goes through many times, because that's the email address they all use. But in general, I would say if a foundation only gives you a postal address, maybe they're not open for applications, because if they hide so well, maybe they don't want to connect. So then maybe that's a dead end. Or you have to try to meet someone personally. So if you know that one of their employees is going to attend a conference, try to attend that same conference and connect with them. Or try to organize a meeting with them, seeing them personally, etc. So yeah, many of you are mentioning that they have issues getting in touch, issues finding donors. Those are things that we really address in detail in the course, in both of the courses, how to find donors and how to connect with them, how to find email addresses, how to find a good point of entry, etc. So I really recommend you refer to those resources. Finding donors is difficult because there's so many out there as well. So sometimes it's a good idea to check like-minded organizations to see which donors funded them, and then to check which projects they supported in the past, etc. There's a couple of techniques you can use, and Eric goes into a lot of detail in his course on them that are very useful. But yeah, Google is going to be your friend as well. I'm sorry, I'm noticing now that some of you complained about an echo. I'm very sorry. I just reading that now, and I don't really know what happened there. I'm sorry if that was an issue throughout the presentation. You can also find me, I'm just seeing here, you can find me on LinkedIn as well, under my name, Dr. Eva Wieners. So you feel free to send me an invitation, maybe send me a small message telling me that you joined the webinar, and then I know where you're coming from. That will make it easier for me. Yeah, I think I'm seeing not many more questions. To write a proposal for a project that is yet to begin. Yes, I mean, you generally should write proposals before you start the project, because many donors don't fund retroactively. So once you've started, they will not give you funding for it. So you should do it beforehand. So of course you have to have a good project plan. You have to write a budget. You kind of have to calculate into the budget that prices might change. So that is important. But in general, you should always write proposals before you start the project. If you don't have the funding, if you have the funding anyways, then you can just move ahead. But otherwise, try to plan beforehand. Yeah, so the link for the proposal writing webinar, I think my team is back on, and they just posted this. An exchange, do you have an exchange rate platform that you use for conversions? Actually, I always just use Google, what pops up the first. But sometimes if you really have to use that, ask the donor that you're writing a proposal for which one they want you to use, or explain which one you used. That might be helpful. Something that is as realistic as possible. And sometimes donors have preferences there. So if you carefully read the guidelines, if you're answering to a specific call, sometimes they even tell you which exchange rate calculator you're supposed to use. At what stage do you send a concept note with the initial email? That's a very good question. It depends a lot. If it's a complete cold email and you have absolutely no connection whatsoever, I think I wouldn't send a concept note. Then I would just try to find some common ground and ask for a phone call, maybe a Skype meeting, whatever is easy, and then in the next stage send a concept note. But sometimes you meet people at a conference, you talk to them, and you've already explained about your organization and they have interest. And maybe they give you your business card and then they ask for more information. So then that's a good point to send the concept note. You also have to distinguish kind of two types of concept note. There's one that is answering to a call. That's very specific. They tell you what they want to see. It's like a small proposal, and that includes a budget. But usually, if you are just trying to make contact, you're not supposed to include a full budget or numbers or a request for money. It's more the same. It's more trying to make contact, trying to spark interest, see where you can go with that potential partner. So if it's the very first email, never met that person before, I wouldn't send a concept note out of the blue. But if you have some kind of connection, then it might be a good first or second step. Yeah, of course, that's true. Somebody's suggesting that everything has to be virtual now because with the current situation, conferences, workshops, etc. are not going to happen anytime soon. That is true. But still, there's some formats out there that are kind of interactive. Sometimes things happen through Zoom where you can all see each other, and that's a way to network. You can try to track down email addresses, try to connect that way. Try to connect on social media, follow people, comment on their stuff if you feel like it could be a good match, and just use all those ways. Like I said in the course, we have a sample for a cold email as well to make that a contact. That will help you a little bit, but I think email is the thing that we kind of have to go back to during these times. And social media might, I think that will become much more important, particularly LinkedIn, because that's a professional platform. Facebook is sometimes used in a semi-professional way as well. And that's, I think, a good way to get in contact, to just tell people, oh, I like you, I'm interested in your work, and just get this first introduction, and then you can maybe take it further. Okay, then there's last question, the importance of the content, of the important part of the concept note. Again, we had, I talked about that in our last webinar. It was specifically about the concept note. So I just would like to refer you to that. I think my team posted the link to our past webinars as well. And you can also always get the book that has a lot of information about the concept note, important parts, what to include, calls for action, etc. Okay, so talked an hour. I had planned to talk much less. But yeah, I hope you learned something, you were able to take away something from this webinar. I hope to see you again in one of our future webinars, maybe in one of our courses. That would be really exciting. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our newsletter, follow us on Facebook, and yeah, stay part of our community. And in 2 weeks, we'll have the next webinar. Topics not defined yet, so if you have suggestions, just send them over, and I'm really excited to see you again in the future. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and see you again soon. Bye.